What up, YouTube? It's CS back here with another installment, and here's my review for episode 25 of Deadliest Warrior between the U.S. Army Rangers and the North Korea Special Operation Forces. Well, YouTube, I don't know about you, but I did not think that episode would unfold the way it did. What did you guys think of that? Of course, this was the closest matchup in Deadliest Warrior history. I thought that we would see a close matchup here. I said that the U.S. Army Rangers were going to win up to 55% out of 100 tops, but no, they won, by a margin of 8 kills. Like, that's crazy. Cannot believe it went down that way. I thought they were gonna simply outshoot North Korea and just edge it in long and mid range. That was not the case. They did edge long range, but mid range, they gave up. And they were pretty much split on those two categories because it was 55 to 45 for North Korea in mid-range and 55 to 45 for the Americans in long range. Where they did make a difference was in explosive weapons, and that's where they got 72 to 28%. That is huge. They definitely dominated there. But from what I see in the X Factors, the North Koreans took 4 of the 6, so what can I say? That's huge. It makes sense. They're a very battle-hardened team. I thought that they're pretty, pretty even, though, the U.S. Army Rangers compared to the SOF in terms of those kind of intangibles, because I give both those Warriors a lot of credit. But at the X Factors they looked into that matter most in terms of this kind of battle, North Korea definitely edged it. We saw it. Of course, you got to give them extremism, discipline, psychological warfare, and most of all, terrain. They got those X Factors down, and because of that, they were able to make it close in the one weapons edge they had, which was mid-range weaponry. So you would assume that since there was only an 8 kill difference, the majority of the weapons battles were decided in mid-range, and that's where they definitely triumphed. I'm talking about the North Koreans, of course, but it still wasn't enough because they still got outgunned in long range. They still got outmined in the explosive weapons. That M18 was just nasty. That's all I gotta say. But let's go into the weapons. Let's take a look at long range weaponry between the U.S. Army Rangers and North Korean Special Operation Forces, and here we have the SR-25 against the PSL. Alright, YouTube, now taking a look at this long-range test, pretty easy to give this the edge to the Americans and their SR-25. U.S. Army Ranger Tim Kennedy definitely did his thing with it. I talked about this in my prediction video. Charles Joe on the Korean side would have a hard time going up against the time Tim Kennedy put up and the manner he did. He missed maybe once, twice tops. He could afford to miss with a 20-round magazine because that's a lot of rounds. You have a lot of bullets to put in people, and since he was pretty accurate, he had the bullets to do confirmation kills. So he was putting multiple bullets in the targets he was shooting at. If you took a look at the sniper he shot at, the sniper target, he put like 3 in them. One went through the barrel and instantly killed him anyway. That was pretty sick. So what can I say? Some sick shooting on the side of Tim Kennedy. He had more rounds and he was more accurate. Part of the reason why he was more accurate is because he didn't have to refocus. The recoil on the PSL is a bitch to deal with, especially when you're trying to go up against Tim Kennedy's time. You do a shot and then you're trying to refocus because the recoil, was against you. That doesn't help your cause, especially in this test where you're also timed. So that didn't help the PSL's cause. The only thing he had going for it is basically its power, the stopping power on that thing. Obviously better, bigger round, just makes sense. But yeah, the 10-round magazine didn't help as well, because if you're already inaccurate with that thing, you probably wish you had bullets to back it up with, and you only have 10. And you even saw Charles had to reload there, so that didn't help his time as well. So honestly, traditional Deadliest Warrior test, Season 1-2, this thing would get blown out of the water by the SR-25. But with the X Factors considered, it was only a 55 to 45% margin. again, Tim Kennedy had everything going for him in this test: accuracy and more rounds. Again, this would have been huge in the traditional Deadliest Warrior testing, but again, with the X factors considered, it only was 55 to 45. Makes sense considering North Korea dominated the X factors, and that's why it was only that much. But still, edge to the SR-25. All right, folks. Now moving on, we have the mid-range weaponry to talk about. On one side, you have the AKM of the SOF, and then on the other side, you have the M4 of the U.S. Army Rangers. A lot of people were for sure thinking that the M4 would get the edge over whatever the North Korea would put up, whether it was a Type 56 or a variation of an actual AK. But the actual AK actually won out here. Part of the reason I would say it won out in the end is due to the fact that this was in the Korean Peninsula. Not the friendliest environment. I think durability was definitely taken into account during the testing. During the sim. Definitely one of the factors I believe were plugged in. But also it did perform better in the test that you did see. If you got to give the AKM anything over the M4, it's definitely power. Stopping power was insane. You saw it there. Definitely the more devastating round. One or two, well, that's all you need with that shit. Tim Kennedy had to put like 3 or 4 in targets just to neutralize them. I'm sure they're neutralized after like 1 or 2, but you have to be more sure with the M4. It is a finesse gun compared to the AK. The AK is definitely a power gun, and if this was a finesse test, like where you would shoot like moving targets or small ass targets from further away, kind of like the AK versus the Armalite in the IRA Taliban episode, you definitely have to give the edge to the M4 if it was tested in like that kind of manner, or say the M4A1 versus the AK-74 in the Green Beret versus Spetsnaz episode. I thought the test would wind up looking somewhat like that, but no, this was in a manner where it favored the North Koreans, which is appropriate because this matchup should favor the North Koreans if this shit takes place in the Korean Peninsula. So mid-range weaponry, definitely the emphasis of law battles nowadays in real life, and definitely the emphasis of this battle. So it doesn't shock me to see that they would make the test favor the North Koreans because of the fact that this thing does happen in North Korea. So the test automatically has to favor them, and definitely favors the AK in this situation because you don't have to be a precision shooter to outgun an M4 in this test. So again, edge goes to the North Korean Special Operation Forces and their AKM. Now, moving on, we have the explosive weapons. This made the difference for the U.S. Army Rangers. They were up against the box mine of the SOF, and they had the M18 Claymore. This is really easy to break down. Claymore, more frag, bigger blast radius, all shockwave patches were tripped. If the shock wasn't killing you, the frag was. So yeah, definitely have to give it the edge. And what did you have? Maybe 1 death out of the mine. So nah, you'd rather kill someone with a Claymore. You gotta run with that. You're not here to fuck with people's psyche. Sure, you got psychological warfare on the side of the box mine, but hey, you're here to kill people. So I'd rather kill someone with a Claymore. So edge Claymore. That being said, you also have to look at hand-to-hand combat. Close range, you got the Hapkido Taekwondo hybrid of North Koreans against the whatever close quarter defenses the U.S. Army Rangers were using. Both demonstrated their arts. Pretty cool. What can I say? Definitely cool looking demonstration. I'm a 2nd degree black belt in Taekwondo myself. I wish I still practiced, but watching that brought back memories. That was pretty cool. And the thing is, what I had a problem with that test is that you automatically have to give this to the U.S. Army Rangers if the close quarter combat is his goal is to kill someone with his mid-range weapon. Tim Kennedy said it himself. At the beginning of the episode, hey, we don't fight fair. that was completely exemplified in this test. He's not fighting you with his hands to try to kill you with his hands. He's trying to kill you with his gun, where you're trying to kill someone with your hands. Not only that, you saw the tail of the tape. The North Koreans are going to be smaller than the Americans, so how the hell are they going to beat them there? Let's pretend they're both equally as effective with their art. There's a reason why there's weight classes in combat sports, and to me, this is why the U.S. Army Rangers should have won out. And the fact that they're trying to kill you with something else, so they already have that intention in mind. I think it's easier to push someone away, get your gun and blast them, rather than say try to hand-to-hand them and eventually kill them with your hands. I'm just saying, I'd rather rock what Tim Kennedy's doing, edge to them and their close quarter defenses, whatever they call it. But yeah, again, then you had the X factors in short range. You got to give that to the Americans. They ended up winning up on that. They ended up winning on experience too, operational experience. They're first deployed anywhere they go, wherever the U.S. decides to fight. They're the first ones in, so they get the experience there. But North Koreans can't fall that far behind because they're always at war with South Korea too. So they definitely deserve some props and operational experience. But the rest of the X factors, psychological warfare, extremism, discipline, terrain, definitely on their side. They've been indoctrinated since they're kids. So extremism and discipline, they're a shoo-in for. Psychological warfare, nothing phases those fucks. They don't care. They'll kill their own civilians. They'll kill their own people as long as they get their mission done. They don't care. So makes sense why they got psychological warfare. And terrain, no question about it. Korean Peninsula, that's their shit. They got the edge. And when I saw that shit, I thought that with the X Factors basically going their way, they had a chance. But then I remembered short range combat. I did say that in my description, in my my prediction video, that it would be depicted in the visual sim at the end of the episode. That it was. As soon as I saw the art of Tim Kennedy trying to get his gun while he's in close quarter combat, I knew that's how the one-on-one at the end would wind up. Of course, you have the Korean, trying to look flashy and trying to beat someone up with their Hapkido and Taekwondo, and then on the other side, this guy's just trying to survive and create enough space so he can be effective with his M4. That's what you saw at the end of the visual sim, so I thought that was pretty cool. Just saying, I predicted that. But yeah, y'all, that about does it for me. Eventually, North Koreans, they lost. What can I say? Like, they put up a hell of a fight. They definitely did their thing. What can I say? I'm surprised they lost in the manner they did. They had the X factors going for them. They definitely had the more dominant weapon in the AKM, but they still lost. Explosives for the win, long range sniper rifle for the win. Operational experience, definitely benefited the Americans, and yeah, what can I say? They ended up winning slightly by 8 kills. That's crazy. But again, yeah, thank you for all the support. That about does it for me, YouTube. Stay tuned for my prediction for Genghis Khan Hannibal. That will be up soon whenever I see the first few minutes of that episode. And yeah, I guess you'll see me next week. So please follow me on Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter if you guys have it. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. And please thumbs up if you agreed with the outcome. Thumbs down if you disagreed. Thank you so much and take care.